Hello everybody and welcome back to Until the End of Time. My name is Werner. This is going to be a follow-up video to episode 2 in which I played Curtain Call with Harvey and Tony. In this video I'm going to be reading the resolution that I got because I didn't pick a resolution yet because we had an option. And then I'm going to be upgrading the two decks. But before I get to that, I would like to talk a little bit about what I'm doing with this channel and the videos I've been making. Because I've noticed that both of the videos I've made so far have been significantly longer than I would expect them to be. They've both been over 90 minutes. And I feel like that is perhaps a bit too long, too much of a good thing. So I'm looking into possibly making videos that are somehow shorter or a bit more action, keeping the tempo up. This is a bit tricky because obviously you can't just cut out, turns in Arkham. That's going to lead to a very weird viewing experience. So I haven't quite figured that out yet. But I think I do want to change a little bit how the videos are shot. Another thing that I've been considering is that I think my videos would be better and more interesting to me as well if I did more interesting deck building and investigator talks rather than focusing a lot on campaign play. So while I will be making this video upgrading this deck and probably the next video, which will be playing through the Lost King with these two decks, I might stop this campaign walkthrough there and instead focus on different investigators, different decks, and try to play from there. There's going to be a little card thing in the top right, and there's also going to be a link in the description to a straw poll. You can pick an investigator you would like me to play for an upcoming video there. Just wanted to get that out of the way now. I'll probably mention it again at the end of the video. So with those couple of things out of the way, let's talk about the resolution. So last time we chased the stranger through the theater after watching The King in Yellow. And we had to decide whether we want to warn the police or we want to choose to solve the mystery on our own. And after listening to what you wanted, you said you would like to warn the police. So let's go warn the police. Resolution 1. Resolution 1. Fleeing from the theater, you head straight to the police station in Easttown. Bursting through the door, to the stares of onlookers and police officers alike, you demand to see Sheriff Engel, stressing the importance of your visit. The desk sergeant, who is lazily working through a stack of paperwork, shakes his head and raises a finger in silence, then points to a nearby chair. The wait is excruciating. Every moment is an eternity. The hands of the nearby clock crawl. You drum your fingers on the desk. You tap your feet. You constantly peer over your shoulder to make sure the pallid mask of the stranger is not watching you through the front window. Finally, the desk sergeant puts his pen down and sits up, beckoning you. Alright, what's so important now? You're only halfway through your explanation of the night's events when he sighs and shakes his head. Look, if this is some kind of joke, it ain't funny, he says. We had officers downtown all night. Don't try to feed me some holy shit, holy straight to my face. You insist, but the desk sergeant rises to his feet and opens the door, motioning for you to leave. He raises his voice. What, you think we're not busy enough or something? Beat it! He mumbles about blind birds behind your back as he escorts you out of the station. You know what you saw earlier that night. Frustrated, you head back to the War Theater to find some kind of proof you can take to the police. You're surprised to find the front door of the theater is locked. You're about to decide whether or not to break down the door when you see a notice on the wall near the entrance. Don't be a wet blanket. Come to the King in Yellow cast party, 8 p.m. at the home of Constance the Main, 1452 Atlantic Avenue. Formal dress only. You tear the notice from the wall and fold it into your coat pocket, hoping it will lead you to the answers you seek. Did you really think the police would help you? In your campaign log, record that you tried to warn the police. Mark 1 conviction in your campaign log. If you stole from the box office, record in your campaign log that the police are suspicious of you. We have not stolen from the box office, we would never do that. In your campaign log, record that the stranger's onto you. Add the man in the pallid mask weakness to the lead investigator's deck. This does not count towards deck size. For the remainder of the campaign, anytime the bearer of the man in the pallid mask leaves the campaign for any reasons, choose a new investigator to become the bearer of the man in the pallid mask weakness and add it to that investigator's deck. In your campaign log, under Chasing the Stranger, place 2 tally marks. For the remainder of the campaign, keep a running tally of the number of times the man in the pallid mask is defeated during a game. Each tally will bring you one step closer to the truth. And then each investigator earns experience equal to the victory X value of each card in the victory display. So we earn 8 XP and we have to add the man in the pallid mask to our deck. I'll add him later. So this is perhaps a good chance to talk about upgrading in general. So this is something that I've heard people say they find somewhat complicated, so I'll try to talk through my thoughts, and I'll start with the Harvey deck. So we have 8 XP, and actually, as always with Arkham, when we add cards in that aren't permanent, we have to take a card out because our deck size has to remain the same. We can have a maximum of 2 copies by title of any card, but we can otherwise upgrade basically how we see fit. So the first thing that I did when deciding how to upgrade this deck is, I'm missing a card in here I think, but that's fine. I think I might be missing the new book, the Book of Books. Might not have added that when setting this up. That's fine. We don't necessarily need it. So the first thing I did was looking at our allies. We have both Dr. Milan and the lab assistant. And we kind of want both of these in play because they both give us an ongoing boost. Milan gives us +1 intellect and resources, and the lab assistant gives us an additional hand size, or 2 extra points of hand size. Now, we can't right now because we only have 1 ally slot, but we can buy Charisma, which is a card from, I believe it is Essex County Express, though it might be a different pack. It's definitely from the Dunwich Legacy cycle, which is 3 XP permanent asset that gives us an additional ally slot. This card is, I think, maybe the single most purchased upgrade in the entire game. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the case because it is neutral. It is useful to most investigators since most investigators want ally slots, and allies are generally very strong. So this is a very good upgrade. So the first thing I did was, well, I know I have 2 allies in this deck. I'm going to want to have them out at the same time. I'm going to spend 3 XP on Charisma. Next, I decided I probably want to get some additional mobility. During the last game, I felt that I could often not be in the right place fast enough. I had to waste a lot of actions moving around. We had the Vault of Knowledge that we could give a card to an investigator at our location to draw whenever we investigated, but we often felt like it was better to just take the card for ourselves and not bother moving over to Tony. So I'm going to be adding Pathfinders to my deck. Now, Pathfinder is a 1 XP card, costs 3 resources, has an agility icon, and it has a fast action which lets us exhaust the Pathfinder if we're not engaged with any enemies to move to a connecting location. So we basically get a free move every single turn, and we're going to put 2 copies of this in our deck. They don't take up any slots. You typically don't need both, but we just want to guarantee that we're going to have one of them early enough to keep moving around a pitch. Now this does bring up, we have to replace something because we can't add 2 cards to our deck and then not replace another card. And this is often a very difficult part of the process. There are multiple cards you could see cutting here. I could cut the, what are they called? The guts, because we're not really making that many willpower tests. I could see cutting Shortcut, because it's also a card that gives us more mobility. But I actually decided to just cut Emergency Cash, which is maybe a bit of an odd one because it does something completely different. But Emergency Cash is really only a card you play if you have money issues, right? And I felt we had enough economy last game that I'm okay playing without Emergency Cash. And given that it only gives us money, it doesn't have any icons, it's not really a card you want to draw. This is, yeah, I'm cutting this because I think it's the worst card in my deck, basically. And then finally, the last upgrade is going to be a new Dream Diary. Now, last game we upgraded we translated the Dream Diary. I have to grab the untranslated one here. Because we interpreted the dreams. And now, when you have interpreted the dreams, you can upgrade into the various copies of the upgraded Dream Diary, which are all 2 cost, 3 XP, and they can only be upgraded if you remove the untranslated copy and then you have interpreted the dreams in your campaign log. And each of them gives you the essence of the dream at the start of your turn. So you just get it, instead of having to spend an action, which you had to do with the untranslated one, you just get it every turn. So normally I would spend 6 XP to buy 2 copies, but I only have 3 XP left, right? We have spent 3 XP on Charisma and 2 XP on 2 copies of Pathfinder, so we only have 3 XP left. So normally I would only be able to upgrade one of these, but I have Shrewd Analysis. And this is a permanent card in the Seeker faction that every time we upgrade a unidentified or untranslated card, we can upgrade a second copy at no cost. But if we do so, we have to randomize the versions we're getting. So what I'm going to do is I have 2 piles. Each contains one of each of the copies. One Dreams of Madman, Dreams of Explorer, and Dreams of a Child. We're just going to flip them over, shuffle, and pick one. So I will have a Dreams of an Explorer, which is while you are at a location with at least 4 Shroud, Essence of Dream gates basically an additional wild, so it will have 4 icons. And Dreams of Explorer. Oh, so we ended up drawing 2 Dreams of Explorer. That's fine. We would have preferred to have the Dreams of a Child, as the Dreams of a Child gives us an additional wild if you have at least 8 cards in hand, which would have been amazing. But this is fine. I mean, 4 Shroud location, we're going to end up at 4 Shroud locations occasionally, and just having 2 wild icons is good enough. Now, obviously, because we can only have 2 copies of a card by title, we'll have to remove the 2 Dream Diaries untranslated from our deck to make space for this. So those are going away, the Emergency Cache going away, Pathfinder is going in, and new Dream Diaries are going in. And that is, well, that's Harvey's deck's upgraded. If I was not partnered with Tony, I would maybe look at doing some enemy management. Maybe, what is a good enemy management? Well, Acidic Ichor would be an option, which is an upgrade to the Strange Solution. We have identified the Strange Solution, which is another one of these untranslated and identified cards. But at the moment, because I'm partnered with Tony, I don't really feel like I need that much damage. We have the Might Over Matter if we need to evade something, and otherwise we're probably just fine. And this will let me really push really powerful Investigate and just in general move around a bunch. It's just a really good value package. Now for Tony, we're going to do a little bit more complicated stuff. He too got 8 XP, but we're going to be doing a couple of more tricky things. The first thing we're going to do is buy Adaptable. To me, Adaptable is probably one of the most taken grow cards because it is so good. Every time you finish a game, and even though the game you buy this in, you get to swap out up to 2 level 0 cards and then add in the same number of level 0 cards, still following deck building rules. This gives rogues an unparalleled amount of customization in their decks. It allows them to play a lot of what are known as deck cards, which are cards that have a very niche but very powerful effect. For example, Fine Clothes. Fine Clothes is a 1-cost asset that really doesn't do much normally, but it reduces the difficulty of skill tests during parlay actions by 2. So this is basically like, if you don't parlay frequently, and most scenarios don't feature parlay, the card's not that good, right? It's 1 health, 1 sanity soak, sure, but it takes up a slot, cost 1, whatever. If you are parlaying a lot, this card is amazing, right? It's basically like a flashlight that doesn't have any charges for every parlay action. So we wouldn't want to play Fine Clothes normally, but we do want to have Fine Clothes for some scenarios, like the next scenario, the Lost King. So we can use Adaptable to put 2 of them in and take out a different card that maybe isn't quite as useful, such as Flashlight, which I just so happen to know that next scenario won't have a lot of cards that feature or locations that feature clues. Instead, we want to parlay more, so I will spend my first XP to buy Adaptable and put 2 Fine Clothes in. Now you could of course still spend XP to buy Fine Clothes. According to because of the rules, you can spend 1 XP for each level 0 card to put into your deck, but you're ending up basically wasting XP in this way because, well, for every 1 XP you pay, you could have bought a copy of Adaptable and just get 2 cards. So this is much better, and this one is for every scenario. And I think I have frequently bought 2 copies of Adaptable with the first 2 XP I got in Rogue. The other card I almost always buy after the first scenario is Charon's Obol, the Ferryman's Pay, which has awesome art. It is permanent and it is exceptional, so despite the fact that it has 1 XP dot, it does actually cost 2 XP. And it reads, when earning experience during the resolution of a scenario, if you are not defeated, you earn 2 additional experience. If you were defeated, you are killed. This is pushing your luck rogue style, right? As long as you don't die, you get 2 more XP. If you do die, you die. This is risky. I mean, if there's one class that's good at getting out of dodge, it's probably Rogue. But there's also just rogues are really XP hungry, right? Long-term rogues have a lot of high powerful upgrades they want to buy into, and this will net you 10 XP over the course of a campaign. You will be not getting anything after scenario 1. Is it 10 or is it 8? I think it's 8, sorry. And then after scenario 2, you basically break even. And then from there on, you get a bunch of XP. And then the last scenario doesn't matter, but you end up with a decent chunk of extra XP over the course of a campaign, as long as you don't die. Don't die. In general, this is actually not that hard, as hard as it might sound. A lot of scenarios have resign location, so if it's really going bad, you can just resign. Plus, there's a couple of scenarios that just kill you anyway if you fail, so whatever. Right, I think Obel is basically an auto-include in every rogue list. There's very little reason not to run it. I mean, obviously, if you're playing standalone, don't buy this. It's bad. Our card. Okay, now time to talk about cards we're actually swapping in our deck. First up is Easy Mark. Easy Mark has the Myriad keyword, so it has 3 copies, and we can actually put all 3 copies in it for the cost of 1 XP. It has a intellect and an agility icon. It is an event that gives us 2 resources and lets us draw a card. That's about the same value as an emergency cache, but it also has this ability reaction. After you play Easy Mark, play another Easy Mark from your hand at no cost, and that is significantly better than an emergency cache. The main use for Easy Mark is playing 2 of them early on to get you a couple of new cards and a quick econ boost, set you up. The fact that this has an intellect and agility icon is actually quite important because it makes it just better than emergency cache in most cases, right? Even if it's not something you want to play, you can always just commit it to an agility or an intellect test. What are we taking out? Well, that's going to be a bit of a trickier question because our deck's pretty good. There's a lot of cards we are playing that I like. I think what we're going to be taking out is these Stunning Blows. Part of that is also what we're doing with the last card we're adding. So we're going to take out 2 Stunning Blows, and there's another card I have to cut, which is going to be Intel Report, because next scenario won't have a lot of location with clues on them. So we're taking out 1 Intel Report, and we're adding in these 3 cards. Now, I know that it might seem a little bit weird. Tony can only bring 10 survivor cards, or whatever off-class he picks. So why wouldn't I always want to have the maximum of those? But I think that for the next scenario, it is better to have those extra easy marks, and I can now use Adaptable to put in different survivor cards. So I'm not too worried about having to run without like a good list for too long. And I also just think that the Stunning Blow is very good against in the first scenario because it lets us evade the emissary, which has Retaliate, and thereby turning off the Retaliate. There's no such problems in the next scenario, or at least way less, so we're not bringing Stunning Blow for that one. And then finally, we're upgrading the 41 Derringer into the 41 Derringer level 2. Same cost, same abilities, but the difference is that now we get +1 damage even when we only succeed by 1, because the original Derringer, which there should be one in here. Where is my Derringer? Derringer. There we go. The original Derringer requires us to succeed by 2 in order to deal +1 damage. This Derringer has us only succeed by 1 to deal the +1 damage, and this additional ability, if we succeed by 3 or more, we can take an extra action. That seems pretty good, right? It's not too flashy, but since we want to be running some smaller guns to combine with our signature Colts, this seemed like a decent option. They're not too expensive, and they give us another way to get an extra action, which is one of the ways we could be advancing Tony. And one of the things that so far this deck build has definitely not done is put Tony into a specific deck archetype yet. Tony can actually be built multiple different ways. Because he has a good way of making some early money, you can play him with the cards that reward you for having lots of money. You could do a Succeed by X build, right, where you're going all in, which is a row card that gives you a card for every point you succeeded by to a maximum of 5. Or you could do like Extra Action Tony, which will place cards like Payday, which give you a resource for every action you've taken. And this is something you have to decide when deck building, but it's also not something you have to decide immediately. As I've done right now is I've taken the Derringer, which is a bit of an extra action card, but it's also just a good gun. And I've taken the Easy Marks, which are a bit of a money card, but also just like a good card. And so I usually find that following scenario 1, and even often scenario 2, you can just feel the basics of your deck, right? You don't need to specialize too much yet. And then as you are progressing to the rest of the campaign, start focusing in on things that you think your investigator is doing well, or maybe things that your investigator is doing very poorly that you would like to improve on. Then from there, build into that direction, right? Adapt your deck to be better that way. So this was the resolution for Curtain Call plus some basic deck building. I will post updated deck links in the description below, and I will remind you that I am running a straw poll for you to decide which investigator I will be running next. The straw poll is probably in the little card again, and it is also in the description below. Thank you very much for watching. As always, feedback is seriously appreciated. Thank you very much and have a great day. I will be seeing you until the end of time.